Welcome to HG'd with your boy Keas here on the Back Talk Bros channel. On today's episode of HG'd, we're going to address left tackle contracts. We will take a moment to look at left tackles. We'll look at a couple right tackles as well, but we'll look at tackle contracts in the NFL particularly. And we'll look at a document that I've created to help us get past some of the fluff of NFL tackle contracts and contracts in general and get to the meat and bones of what these guys are actually earning.
Y'all ready for them Chiefs? Y'all ready for them Chiefs?
Okay, so this is a Google sheet that I put together myself here. As you can see, we have our players, their age, the annual average value of the contract, extensions, generally, the extensions as reported, the guaranteed money as reported, the number of years, true money, annual average value, and then my notes on the contracts, and then some definitions. True value for me is the number of years before reaching an out with less than $15 million in cap money. In other words, if the team wanted to move on, they could move on and they'd have less than $15 million in cap to do so. So essentially, they could get out of the contract without having the player under contract for that year. True money then is the total number the total amount of money that's paid over the true years of the contract. In addition, any dead cap money on there. And then the true money AAV is the annual average value paid out for those years. So it's true money divided by true years. And then, of course, years is any year where a contract year was added or a current year has added or new signing bonus on it as a result of a contract or extension. So, for example, there are contracts on this list that were an extension where a player still had a year or two left and they signed an extension. So it's reported, like for instance, Laremy Tunsil, it's reported as a 3-year, $66 million extension. But the reality is that part of the signing bonus is added to the current years that were already on the contract, and so that's kind of a fake number, right? It inflates it because when you say 3 years and $66 million, and the player had 4 years, and part of his signing bonus is going on a year that he already had before the extension, then that money is being spread out. And essentially, it's adding different money, new money, to a year that's not part of that extension. And to me, that adds a year or two, whatever the case is, to that contract. And that's what I'm going to go by. So the most famous one is the guy who many people have as the top left tackle in the NFL. Trent Williams signed his famous deal. Most of the structure of this, as we understand it, was basically crafted by the Chiefs front office, and basically the 49ers said, yeah, let me see that. Yeah, we'll do that. We'll do that deal. Here's a few extra dollars, but yeah, we like the structure of this. We like how it's put together, and so we will do that. So, as we see here, Trent Williams, 33 years old. Annual average value is reported at $23.01 million so that he can have bragging rights as being the highest paid over David Bahktiari at $23 million. Also has $45.1 million in guaranteed money, and it's reported as a 6-year contract. Now, most people understand that it's basically 2 3-year deals. And this is the way it's structured. It's the way that it's structured. It's basically the last 3 years are option years on this contract. So this contract is set up with very little money in the first 3 years. I have it on here, 60.5 million. You have the 45.1 million that's guaranteed. So part of that is signing bonus that's going to get spread out over 5 years. But we only have 3 years. So part of that is going to be added on to our true money, because even though you cut a guy after 3 years, you still got to give him he's already been physically paid the money, but for salary cap purposes, you're still going to take the hit for those 2 years. So in this case, that money gets added on there, and it gets added on to the true money. So essentially, if it wasn't for that, the true money wouldn't even be that high. This true money includes dead cap money in that signing bonus for years 4 and 5. And even with that, the true money value only gets up to $60.5 million, which over 3 true years means that Trent Williams' average annual value is only $20.166 million, nearly $5 million short of the $25 million AAV that Orlando Brown is reportedly asking for. David Bahktiari, you can see similarly here. 29 years old. His is reported at $23 million, just below Trent Williams. Guaranteed money is $30 million. 5 years. True years on here you see is I have 3, just because of the way that it's structured. The true money comes in barely a little over $1 million, 1.25 million under Trent Williams, and so his true money annual average value is $19.75 million, not $23 million. The Packers could have. Now, if you go look at his contract now, the Packers have restructured it already. Okay, they've restructured it a lot. So if you go look at it now, you're going to see that now the Packers can't get out after 3 years. But when it was originally signed, this was the amount of true years. This was the amount of true money. This is why the structuring is important, why planning your cap hits is important. Because if you don't, then you get into some of these complications that the Packers had and some of the restructuring they did. Now, Laremy Tunsil and Ronnie Stanley are 2 guys who you'll see sign their contracts the same age that Orlando Brown Jr. is now. So you might find them a little more interesting here in our comparison. Laremy Tunsil is a guy who was still under contract. So like I said, it's touted as a 3-year, $66 million extension. And so there's new money there. But when you take those 3 years, it's $22 million. But the reality is some of the money is thrown on an existing year. So it's really 4 years. And the actual is $19 million. 19.08 to be precise here. So his contract you can look at in either 2 ways. You could technically get out of it after 2 years and have spent $50 million, which would make it that $25 million that Orlando Brown Jr. wants. But it's a perfectly good contract to let him play out all 4 years. And if he plays out all 4 years, the fluff, the so-called fluff, isn't there in his contract. and it's only $19.08 million per season if you let him play out his contract. So this is one of those unique ones that is kind of the reverse of it. Now, Ronnie Stanley, he's been injured, but he signed this when he was 26 years old. The annual average value is $19.75 million. I know a lot of people have pointed to Ronnie Stanley as what they think Orlando Brown Jr. should get. $64.166 million, and it's a 6-year deal. Even if it's 5, I think technically, yeah, it's a 5-year extension. Part of that money got thrown on to the first year. So again, to me, technically, that is a 6-year deal. And that's all I'm going to say about it. I'm not going to go through all of these, but for me, the way that it's structured, if you look at it, after year 4, you can cut him and only have $13.6 million in dead cap space. And so because of that, the true years is only 4, and that puts the annual average value at $19.155 million, about $500,000 less than the average of the 5 years of the extension. Jake Matthews would probably be the most ridiculous example here, because his does look like it's more if you only go by the out that the Falcons have. If they go by the out of 3 years, sometimes it's actually best to let the full contract play out to be cheaper. This is one of those cases. Maybe that's what Orlando is going for and Veach is pushing back against. He's probably pushing back because he wants one of these other contracts. Like the Trent Williams contract, I think we would all be fine for, because again, it's basically 2 3-year contracts, right? The second 3 years has a much greater, as I put here, the second 3-year contract option, if it's accepted, the true money value of it is $25.77 million. So the first 3 is $20.166 million. The second 3 is $25 million. I think Veach would be absolutely thrilled to do something like that, because you get 3 years and Orlando gets 3 years to prove that he's worth $25 million. And if he is, then he gets it in a second 3-year contract with the Chiefs for $25 million. If not, they can move on. If not, he can negotiate to, get out of the contract, make some concession, and hit free agency again and cash in big. It can be a win-win all around. Anyway, you can look at these different contracts. Kolten Miller's contract might be the biggest steal that I've seen here, because the Raiders could, the way it was structured, get out after 3 years. Either way, they're not paying much money. Look at the number. They're not paying much money. It's a huge, huge steal. You can look at some of these other players. Again, this column here is the only one that really matters for us. You can look at these numbers. You don't see $25 million. Some of these guys may be getting 24 or 25 if they're cut before the end of their contract, which means the front part of it is heavy, and the Chiefs are definitely in no place to do that. And if they did, that kind of destroys your, we need the cap space argument, so we got to sign the contract. Well, no, not if the first 2 or 3 years are going to mean that you're going to have a $25 million AAV. You want that 25 AAV to either be on the last 3 years or 2 years, or you want it to be heavily weighted towards the end, the last 2 or 3 years, so that when it's coupled with the first 2 or 3 years, it pulls the average up to 25. So like 20 the first 3 years and close to 30 the last 3 years. That pulls it to 25. Brown isn't going to want that, and the Chiefs aren't going to want it in reverse. So we're going to hit a stalemate, because I don't see the Chiefs compromising on that, simply because they really can't. And they've already shown with the Tyreek Hill trade what they'll do if it gets to that point. I want to thank you for watching this episode of HG'd. If you're not a subscriber yet, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Go ahead and give us a like and share if you like this content. I want to thank you for your time in watching this. Come back next time. Make sure that you catch us every other Thursday night, technically Friday morning, midnight live stream, and Sunday nights in the off season, 7 p.m. And as the season begins, we'll adjust those for game days, and we'll let you know about those. Anyway, I want to thank you for watching this video of the Back Talk Bros channel. We'll see you next time.
You got your team, and we got a kingdom. Ready for war, we score and win. We're the Super Bowl champs, the king of the hill.